Train the muscles, not the joints. So welcome back to Natural Gallant Bodybuilding, and today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about training once every 6 weeks. Now, the reason why I'm talking about this, because it seems absurd to me and to probably a lot of people that have trained to just train once every 6 weeks and get gains. But the reason why I'm talking about this is that there was one person that made a comment on one of my videos and said they train once every 6 weeks and they continue to get gains. So the first thing I'm going to say, first thing right off the bat, is if you're getting gains with this technique, congratulations, that's great, because I wish I could get away with just training once every 6 weeks and get gains and massively explode, okay? And muscle growth all over the place, super lean, and the rest of the time just sit on the couch. That's a lot of free time. You have a lot of free time if you're only training once every 6 weeks. The reason why this technique is not valid for most people though, okay, I'm gonna say this, most people, because I'm not condemning a person for getting results with this. If they have the genetics to get gains, I just want to be straight with it, just continue to do that. So I'm not telling you not to do it. But in my experience, and like I said, I've been training for 3 decades and seen a lot of people come and go, and I've competed at the elite level of natural bodybuilding and won, not just, got on stage and got last place or something. I will say this, there's very few elite athletes, unless they're extremely gifted, that can get away with training once every 6 weeks and still compete at the highest level, first of all. Again, I'm also not talking about a sport that has to do with just talent or skill. Bodybuilding has to do with the physiology of the physical body, like what causes it to adapt, what causes it to put on muscle. And if somebody is getting gains from training once every 6 weeks, they've got some extremely specific sort of genetics going on in order to make gains. Now, that's not to say that somebody that just starts off muscular, like some people just genetically are muscular naturally without training at all. They're just naturally kind of muscular. They hold on to that set point of a high amount of muscle, like a Cro-Magnon man or something. Well, that's nothing to do with training stimulus. That just has to do with genetics and where they are at with their genetics, okay? So that's a different thing also to consider. So I know there are going to be people that are commenting down below and saying, I know a guy that doesn't train at all and he looks great. Well, yeah, that's just genetics, okay? But let's talk about training stimulus. Now, over the years, I've met a lot of top-level athletes, and not one of them trained once every 6 weeks and was at the elite level, especially in natural bodybuilding. That didn't happen. I mean, there were guys that I met that were on hormones and stuff, and yeah, it didn't matter what they did, they made gains, but even them, they would train more than once every 6 weeks. So the thing is, now the reason why this doesn't work for me, training once every 6 weeks, is that I've had many times off over the years. I've taken 3 weeks off for maybe a shoulder tweak or something like that. When I dislocated my shoulder, I took 6 weeks off. Or maybe when I tweaked my back when I was 20, I took like a month off. There are many times in my training where I was forced to take time off. Sometimes it was just work related or vacation related, and I didn't have a gym available. And when I took time off, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and I came back to the gym, I was weaker, I was flatter, I was smaller every single time. So if training once every 6 weeks was enough, then I would have grown under that period of time, or I should have grown, or I should have progressed in some way in the bodybuilding, but I didn't. So this is one of the ways that I knew that training once every 6 weeks wasn't enough. So here are a few reasons why training once every 6 weeks might work, and then I'll talk about the reasons why it doesn't work, or it didn't work for me anyway. The reasons why it does work for some people is if they are a beginner and say they don't move, they don't do anything, and then once they start training once every 6 weeks, that's more than they ever did in their life, because before they were just like in sloth status. They're just sitting on the couch or doing absolutely nothing. So any type of stimulus that's more than no stimulus will cause the body to adapt. So in the beginning stages, it's like those newbie gains. It doesn't matter what you do, as long as you add tension to the muscle, something will happen. Now, another reason why this might work, or it could work for a person, is if they have an extremely high level output of hormones of some sort, maybe artificially or naturally, or maybe they genetically are super fast twitch fiber dominant. Maybe they need super large amounts of recovery. But even then, I would say once every 6 weeks would be too little in the training realm as far as stimulating the body to cause it to adapt. Now, another reason that I forgot to tell you, and I forgot to record this when I was on the beach, is if you're only training once every 6 weeks, one reason why that might work is if maybe you have a super labor intensive job where you're actually lifting a lot, but you're not really taking that into account as training itself. but it is training. It still is tension on the muscles. It still is causing the body to have to adapt to muscular endurance type stress or strength stress, right? So the fast twitch fibers or slow twitch fibers are actually being challenged. So sometimes guys that do really labor intensive jobs that require a lot of muscle use, you're using those muscles a lot. If this is happening in somebody's life, this is a type of workout that they might not be considering when they say they only work out once every 6 weeks and get gains. So truth is they're actually working out much more than that. That'll be all. Now, the reasons why this training technique really won't work for 99.9% of people is that, first of all, coordination is a factor in lifting weights. And what I mean by this is that if you are always fighting the balance end or the groove of your squat, the groove of your bench, the groove of any type of exercise that includes free weights, and this especially applies to free weights, you will not necessarily be able to stimulate the muscle as strongly as you could if you have refined that groove, therefore lifting more weight, therefore being able to stimulate the muscle more. Now, when you train once every 6 weeks, you do not develop a lot of coordination in any sort of movement. If you've played any sort of high-end coordination type sports, such as hockey, there's a lot of balance involved, a lot of groove. When you skate, it's like everything has to be perfect. You have to hit the ice at the perfect angle in order to get that power drive forward when you're skating. You have to be able to edge properly, to turn and stick handle, everything. Like, there's all these different subtle skills that are involved in hockey. Well, these subtle skills, this motor coordination, especially when it comes down to free weights, is also involved. The first time you ever bench pressed, or the first time you ever squatted, the first time you ever incline pressed, you will notice that there was a lot of shakiness involved. You're pressing all over the place. Some guys, it's almost like when they start bench pressing, they're almost like rowing a boat at first. They don't know how to coordinate the muscles together. And this is the extreme case, of course, but when you are refining that groove by training multiple times a week, you will become more able to stimulate the muscles stronger. Some people call it mind-muscle connection. Some people just call it straight up coordination. But there are no elite athletes that I know of that only train, especially when it comes down to bodybuilding or weightlifting, once every 6 weeks. Like, no powerlifter trains squat once every 6 weeks and gets to elite level. No Olympic lifter CrossFit trains a snatch or some sort of lift once every 6 weeks and establishes perfect coordination. Now, that's just the coordination aspect. We're not talking about even the muscle physiology, but the coordination is not developed. So if the coordination isn't there, it will be harder for you to stimulate the muscle enough so that way it needs the recovery that you're talking about when it comes down to the 6 weeks, or this person is talking. The other thing is that the body adapts to what it needs to adapt to. So if your environment is only saying once every 6 weeks I need to be strong, but 99% of the time out of that 6 weeks I just sit around and do nothing, the body will adjust to that. Under most circumstances, again, this person who commented might be a genetic deviation of some sort, but most people need to train more often because their body is adapting always. You're adapting either to not training or you're adapting to training. Now, I agree that sometimes you need more rest than other times. Sometimes maybe you need to go from training 5-6 days a week to training 2 days a week or 3 days just to give your body a rest, or maybe you need to take a week or two off. I'm open to all that stuff, but training once every 6 weeks, that's just a glorified time off period. And that doesn't mean it's going to work always. That is just maybe a one-time only where you just were so damn overtrained that you needed that 6 weeks off. And then the other thing, sometimes people say they get gains out of training less frequency. And then when you look at their job, they're actually doing a labor job where they're lifting all day. So they're really not taking 6 weeks off. They're actually training every day by lifting boards or working on a construction site or something like that. And then they go to train once every 6 weeks. And that's a totally different scenario. So when I mean training once every 6 weeks, I'm saying you're not doing anything the other days. You're just training or working out or lifting weights once every 6 weeks. Now, the biggest proponent of less working out, more intensity, and more gains was Mike Mentzer. And I talked to Mike Mentzer. I met Mike Mentzer. And he used to say training once a week or once every 8 days would have been ideal, and it didn't matter what body part you trained, and you would just cycle through the body parts. So say you train chest once every 8 days and biceps or something like that, and then you would train the next 8 days, you train legs, or the next 8 days after that, you train back. And he was a big proponent of this. Now, I tried this type of training. It doesn't work at all for me. It was the worst possible thing. I feel in a lot of ways it's a natural bodybuilder bane. Most people will get no results from this, but it does cater to the collective because it somehow sounds easier to people and it sounds more convenient because then they can get away with just training once and then they can go about their other hobbies or do whatever else with their life with all that spare time they have because they had that one intense workout once every 8 days. So again, if it works for you, I encourage you to keep doing it. I encourage you to stick with it. But for me and for most of the people I ever met or trained, that this method did not work. If they trained once every 8 days, they came in the gym and they were just basically at square one over and over and over again, and they were really never getting gains. So based on that, I would say, if Mike Menser, the guy that said less frequency is better and maybe you need more rest and you need more intensity, all this stuff, and he was saying you have to have a gut-busting workout, like so bad that you're throwing up on the floor in order to basically work with this type of rest time, I would say if he's only recommending an 8-day rest or 7-day rest, I'm pretty sure 6 weeks would be overkill. So on that note alone, I would say, yeah, you don't need 6 weeks rest. And if you are taking 6 weeks rest, you're just trying to come up with a reason, or at least most people will be trying to come up with a reason for not training and still saying, hey, at least I did enough in order to get gains today. So yeah, so training once every 6 weeks, in my opinion, it's absurd for most people, but if it works for you, keep doing it. I'm not going to let my idealism or even my own experience overshadow your experience. So if your experience is saying, hey, you just keep on making gains, you know what? There's something else going on with you that I don't understand, and keep doing it. Keep training that way until you're not getting gains, and then maybe you need to change something from there. So yeah, congratulations. I wish I was you. So I hope this helps you out with your training. I hope this helps you at least see from my point of view why once every 6 weeks training doesn't really work, at least for most people. And if you need to go me, just go to naturalgallantbodybuilding.com, and thanks a lot to the patient supporters, and take care for now.